done there, you're absolutely engaged with the individual. You're basically listening, and when someone speaks, you're paraphrasing. You're doing what I just described in that exercise in that video, which is reflecting what is said. Withholding judgment or advice. Because withholding judgment may not be, wow, that's really fucked up, or dude, you shouldn't do that, shit's dangerous. But you know what? It doesn't even have to be verbal. It can be this. It can be a facial expression that basically says, what the fuck are you doing? And again, I know it sounds weird, but I want you to consider that reaction in the circumstances that we're in. Because let me be frank, we are not going to be in a beautiful office with two fancy Ames chairs sitting across from each other having a cup of tea.
In complete silence.
In complete silence. We are going to be surrounded by sirens. We are going to be in places where the person we're speaking with might smell really bad. We are going to be in places where people are traumatized. We are going to be in spaces where the unexpected will happen. Do you know Gunnar? Are you familiar with the Gunnar Coango 101 story?
Give me a little more details, maybe.
When the shooting happened and the bridge got closed off?
Yeah.
So that our colleague was engaging people under a bridge, and somehow Highway Patrol and LAPD all showed up, not to the encampment, to the freeway over it, because there was a report of a person with a weapon. And in order to seek who this person was and stop traffic and search the surrounding area, they cordoned off both entrances under the bridge with yellow tape and didn't allow anyone who was under the bridge to go out because they were looking for an active shooter, right? It so happened that at that moment when they closed the bridge, Gunnar and his colleague were engaging people under the bridge to talk about the vaccine. And so Gunnar thought, well, I could show my credentials and they'll let me go. No one leaves. There's a person out here with a gun. And apparently, according to the story as it's been told to me, Gunnar was under that bridge with his colleague for about 45 minutes with an encampment of people who were homeless. And what do? What Gunnar did was that Gunnar noticed that one of the people in the encampment had a tattoo of Ren and Stimpy, or of a cartoon character. And he started talking about the cartoon, and they started talking about the cartoon back to Gunnar. And when the conversation started to be about Fred Flintstone, the Jetsons, Ren and Stimpy, whatever it is, it suddenly turned into an entire conversation with all the people in the encampment about what everyone's favorite cartoon was. And for 45 minutes, everyone under that bridge where they were surrounding Gunnar and a colleague were all taking turns talking about what their favorite cartoon had been. At the end, when the tape was cut and folks were told you can go about your business, the people said, oh, by the way, why are you guys here? Oh, we were here for the vaccine. Let's go. And everybody started rolling up their sleeves and letting Gunnar and his colleague vaccinate every person in that encampment. There was no conversation about what the vaccine does. There was no conversation about the side effects. It was just the fact that this person was so incredibly funny and laughable, and I enjoyed this conversation. Go ahead. What you got for me? Let's go. And I realize that I'm missing chunks of it, but I want to just be clear in that this example shows you how by just engaging in the person where you're using attentive listening, where you're listening, where you're sharing the thing back to them, you feel comfort, you feel safety. How odd is it when you're having a conversation with someone about, let's say, last night's game, and in the middle of the conversation, did you eat? What did you eat for breakfast? What does that have to do with last night's game? Not only does it have nothing to do with it, but are you listening to me? Are we having the same conversation? It's kind of off-putting. It's kind of off-putting in the era of cell phones and in the era of your sister calling you to complain about your dad when you should be focusing about, this. All that being said, I want to be very clear that withholding judgment was very key because I never saw the person in this clip show any kind of resentment, anger, frustration towards the individual. On top of that, the person felt valued. Think about the hard topic that man was talking about, the man was stuttering about, and that a few times you saw him smile. And that even in the first seconds of the interview, when he was saying that my name is Nathan, it's actually my friends call me Nate, there was something very comforting about how the person said hello that made him crack a smile seconds into the conversation. It involves more than just hearing someone speak. You practice active listening when you're fully concentrating on what is being said. You listen with all your senses and give your full attention to the person speaking. There is a positive and a negative part to this piece. Does anyone want to tell me what it is? This clip right here.
There's a positive and negative.
There's something positive, which is the beauty of what this clip, what this actual statement says. What is the possible dangerous part of it? Again,
I mean, I would worry maybe that he might become attached to that person specifically. I don't
true,
know.
you could start to become emotionally connected to that individual where you start to give a full amount of devotion. But I want you to hear something. Fully concentrating on what is being said. I am fully concentrating on what Cyril is telling me. I have no idea if Jake is pulling a knife on me. I have no idea if the cars are now, instead of driving 25 miles per hour, or driving 75 miles per hour. A colleague this week, while we were in this classroom, was talking to a person outside about the vaccine, and he had his backpack on, and in his backpack he had $2,000 worth of gift cards. And while he was talking, he felt some movement in his backpack and realized that a person standing behind him had a lead pipe, had opened the bag, and was trying to pull the gift cards out of his bag. But he did not realize that this person had been trying to open this complicated backpack until he felt it rustle. And at first he thought it was a coworker who was trying to get something out of his bag. And it wasn't until he turned around that he saw that this person was holding a pipe. And when he made eye contact with the person looked at him in the eyes and said, "Today's a good day to die." He was so engaged in that conversation with the gentleman who was actually interested in the vaccine that he had no idea that someone was going through shit in the back.
What happened?
He wasn't alone. He was with two nurses from UCLA, and they backed up and freaked out. And the gentleman, our colleague, grabbed the guy that they were interviewing, and they all went across the street. And when they went across the street, the guy saw that there was a security guard, and he didn't feel like going across the street, so he kept walking up the street. He didn't take anything out of his bag. No one noticed the guy. When our colleague was talking to the guy, the two nurses were also talking, at the guy. And the mistake there was that we don't need 3 people to talk to Cyril. You know what? Sure, Fred and I are going to talk to Cyril, but you know what Jake's going to do? Jake's going to not even look at the guy, just look around us to see if there's any distractions. Is anyone coming our way? And I realize this moves away from active listening, but I want to talk about safety. Because you may be very engaged, but you're so engaged, talk about fishing, you're in that moment where you're looking at the fish and the fly, that you're not noticing that comets are hitting the earth or that there's an earthquake, right?
I mean, maybe specifically to that point too, I remember one of my clients, or maybe a few of them, ended up telling me something that I didn't think about too much too, that they didn't like their back to the door,
Oh,
those
yeah.
kind of things, because they're just exposed that way, and so a lot of our conversations were always sideways to the wall, so that you could look to the left, but that's the only direction you had to look, kind of a thing. Where
Very beautifully
I
said.
didn't put, at that time when I was first starting this, I didn't think about the fact that why would they enter my office with one entrance and want to be facing me this way, which is exposed to their back. Again, those are, so let's walk over here, let's come over here if we're talking in the street in Skid Row. I don't want to get clipped by a car another day. Let's go to the fence or a corner or something like that too, to just be more protected that way. Something I would have never thought about.
How would you?
I've never been in a situation, but they definitely have. You come to find out they've been stabbed or whatever, or any number of things happen to them. Why would you want to expose yourself?
Many, many years ago, I met a veteran from Afghanistan and Iraq who was sleeping in an encampment adjacent to the 405 freeway. I didn't meet him at his encampment. I met him on the streets. And the reason I met him on the streets was because in the middle of doing an index where I was interviewing people, this gentleman had openly admitted that he really would need help with advocacy in the VA hospital. And he wanted to show me that he had an ID and that he had his medical card, but he didn't have it on him. So he invited me and my teammate to go back to his encampment so he could pull it out and show us. That way we could take a photo of it, because he did give us permission to take a photo of it, so we could submit it to the VA. We followed the gentleman to the encampment, and the encampment was right on the edge of the 405. Just imagine that this wall is the wall of the 405 freeway with a little bit of a hill, and his tent was right up against the wall. The first thing that caught my attention when we got to the encampment is that his tent and his sleeping bag were up against the wall, but on the wall there were mirrors, like those rear side view mirrors on the cars. They were clearly vehicle mirrors that had been JD welded on the wall, and it was a beautiful collage of mirrors. There must have been at least 30 of them that he had JD welded to the wall of the 405 freeway. And we were really blown away by this, because it looked like art, but it wasn't art. He basically explained to us that when he slept in his encampment, he could sleep facing the wall, and he could always look at the mirrors and see if someone was sneaking up behind him, if anyone was coming near him. On top of that, he had discarded a lot of plastic bottles and laid them around the encampment because when you walk over the plastic bottle, you make noise. So if anyone came near him, he could hear them from 15 feet away or 20 feet away. This guy was incredibly kind. He was very generous and he was very agreeable in all the things we needed to do. But the most jarring part of this engagement we had was that when we said, hey, look, we'll be back. We're going to contact these folks, and if this is where you're going to be, let us know. If not, here's our number. Let us know where you have to move. And he goes, no, trust me, I'm going to be here. Okay, take care. Oh, hold on. Listen. He told us this. When you guys come here to check on me, announce yourself. Like, let me know that you're coming. Like, tell me, hey, I'm Rudy. Hey, I'm Stephanie. So I know you guys are coming. Because if you sneak up on me, I'll kill you. And that's how he said it. Have a good day. And this was a veteran of Afghanistan and Afghanistan and Iraq, and he was incredibly, like, scared. He was a big guy too, but he could not stand loud noises. He did not want surprises, and he slept in a way that provided him safety by doing that. He would break cars' mirrors off in Westwood, around UCLA, to glue them with the JB Weld that he shoplifted from AutoZone to the wall so that he could make sure that no one was going to sneak up on him. And again, I share that with you as a very extreme example of how walking up behind someone and tapping on the shoulder is a friggin' Russian roulette that often may not have very positive results, okay? Neutral and not judgmental, patient. Again, patient. Think about how many times our friend... Did you guys hear those weird moments of silence where there were like gaps of like 8 or 10 seconds? Where he's like, well, and like you would hear him. That's that process. What you don't want to do is feel the need that when there is a gap, you have to say something. Think about when you've been on a first date with someone and it's really quiet and no one's saying anything to each other. And you're like, I gotta say something. This is really awkward. What do I say? We don't need that here. Let the thing go. Let the thing go naturally so that it flows at the pace that the person wants. Asking questions is a tricky one because remember, you want to frame the questions around what is being talked about. You never heard the nurse in this clip ask the gentleman a question that was not related to the nature of what they were talking about. I may need to know your date of birth at some point, but if we are in the mix of something where you are going to what's called change talk, please stay on that topic because it's very, very tempting to say, do you need shoes? When was the last time you ate? And that may not be where that conversation is at that moment. Summarizing is key because you saw it said here. You saw this gentleman do it very brilliantly. Let me make sure I understand. You feel like it's gotten a little bit out of hand. Okay. Active listening serves as the purpose of earning trust of others and helping you understand their situations. Active listening comprises both a desire to comprehend as well as to offer services and empathy to the speaker. It differs from critical listening in that you are not evaluating the message of the other person to offer your own opinion. Rather than the goal is simply for the other person to be heard. Perhaps, and I want to be clear here because solve their problems is a loaded statement. Perhaps solve their problems. Being stuck in your head, not showing respect to the speaker, only hearing superficial meaning, interrupting the person, not making eye contact, and rushing the speaker are all the kiss of death. And again, you may not go into conversation with someone thinking that you're going to do these things, but guess what? You have a deadline. Guess what? Someone told you they're going to call you at 11, and now it's 10:59. The other thing has to do with obviously being stuck in your head. What if the person said something that suddenly triggered a thought or memory in your head where you're thinking, my God, this reminds me of my conversation with my cousin. Oh shit, this person is acting like my cousin. You know what? He has the same hair color as my cousin. And I know it sounds weird. Why would you do that? But you may not realize it, that something will engage your memory or trigger a thought where you may not realize it, but suddenly you're 2 minutes into the conversation and you haven't been listening to the person because you're stuck in a space. Becoming distracted, topping. I'm the king of topping, guys. I'm trying to get rid of topping. I don't want to outdo you, Cyril. When you tell me your story, I want to commend you on yours and not try to tell you one that was bigger. Forgetting what was said in the past is also the kiss of death. And for those of us like me who have bad ADD and rely on coffee and drugs to stay focused on people, that's a tough one. Because again, one can get really easily distracted by things. Unimportant details, focusing too much on the details, missing the big picture, ignoring what you don't understand. Ignoring what you don't understand is incredibly easy, folks. Because if suddenly someone starts talking to me about their benefits and the fact that they didn't get their food stamps and the fact that they didn't get their cash aid, and I have zero idea what GR is and I do not know what food stamps are, I might just say, well, this would be the part of the movie where I fast forward because I don't know this or I don't understand it. No. Don't be afraid to ask the person and say, you know what, I'm not that familiar with it. Tell me, how often do you get paid? And what is a QR7? And why is it you have to go every month to sign papers to get your money? What happens when you don't sign those papers? Now, mind you, there's a thin line there. I don't need to get away from the subject, but you do not want to skip the things. Have the person, if they're willing to share it with you, share that with you. I'm the king of daydreaming. I hope you guys aren't. And only pretending to pay attention is the worst, obviously. There's nothing more disheartening, not in the work we do, in life, than when the person at the DMV is basically looking at their watch saying, I'm going to go to lunch in 2 minutes. The benefits of active listening, except for Lincoln Heights, by the way. Except for the Lincoln Heights DMV. Establishing the habit of active listening can have many positive impacts on your life. Relationships, active listening has the benefits that allows you to understand the point of view of another person. Again, I would argue that none of these things are just relegated to homelessness. Shoot, try these skills with a friend. Try these skills with strangers. Go at a party and do it with work. It allows you to have questions to make sure you understand what is being said. It validates the speaker and makes them want to speak longer. It's not hard to see how this type of listening would benefit relationships. I would argue that in the video you just saw, a conversation about a person's cocaine addiction could have been very short. It could have ended with, I don't want to talk about it. And you know what? I want to change the subject. But for 16 minutes, we saw a very thorough conversation where the person revealed a lot about themselves because of the faith and honesty they felt from how the other individual did not judge them and allowed for them to process these things. Being an active listener means that you recognize that the conversation is more about your partner than you. This is especially important when in a relationship a partner is distressed. Your ability to listen actively to a person going through a difficult time is a valuable skill. In addition, active listening helps relationships in that you will be less likely to jump in with a quick fix when the other person just wants to be heard. And that's the other thing. How hard is it for us to be able to distinguish that we are not coming in to fix things, we are not coming in to solve things, we are coming in to engage in dialogue that could open doors to solutions, but that they should never walk in with the idea that you are a handy person with a set of tools that's going to magically resolve these things. There was it's a sad story. Did you guys pay attention to the shirts you're getting? Did you guys look at the front and the back? What does it say on the back of the shirt?
Code response team.
It says Housing for Health.
Housing for Health, yeah.
Right.
Front says code response team.
But yours did do that. And at an event, a colleague was suddenly being surrounded by a lot of people at a shelter where everyone saw the word housing on the back of the shirt, and everyone just formed a circle around her asking, do you have housing?
It happens actually a lot.
You've seen it.
It's happened to me. It sucks because we can't really, there's like a lot of conversation between the CHWs that although we're there to support PH, that we can't do too much with the housing situation. Like we're kind of capped at a certain point, so it sucks that when they'll surround everybody with a shirt, housing, and we look on HMIS, give them a phone number, and don't really get farther than that.
I would argue that Fred, Jake, and Jordan, because of their work, know the good and the bad, the honest and the broken parts of Housing for Health. I don't need to repeat it, preaching to the choir. You all know that Housing for Health is, in essence, if you've been chronically homeless and you are a regular patient in a hospital, you qualify for Housing for Health. And that ultimately the idea is that you will be placed in an apartment, a scattered site apartment, PSH, maybe boarding care, maybe skilled nursing facility. But we also know that that process doesn't happen in 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes 2 years, sometimes it takes longer. You three, to a certain degree, our friend Chase at the end, have that understanding. So that if someone said to you, because they saw your shirt, hey, what's Housing for Health? You might be able to describe it well. You're going to have colleagues that are still having a hard time with it. You're still having colleagues who are, this is their first job ever in this work. Please take a minute to explain it to your colleagues. And again, be honest. I mean, there's no harm in saying it. The intent of Housing for Health is beautiful. It's exceptional. It's the leader. It's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen done as far as homelessness goes in Los Angeles. It is up against the reality that we don't have housing. It is up against the reality that of all the apartments available for rent in the city, less than 2% are available right now. So let's just weigh the two things and make sure we understand that. If I was in that person's shoes that was surrounded by people, I would have just put Gorilla Tape over the housing so that nobody could see it. Again, I just realized I said that to the camera, sorry. Active listening will benefit you as you meet the new people. Asking questions, seeking clarification, and watching body language are always ways to learn more about the people whom you meet. Body language is so key. Obviously, there's a difference, you would say, Jake, between me going like this to you and me going like this to you. There is that leverage I feel when I'm at your level and I feel like I can have a conversation that's equitable from when I am a place of disbalance. Because who approaches you when you're on the streets like this? The officer who's tapping you on the shoulder to say, hey, 4118 ticket, hey, move your shit, hey, you can't be here. Here, it happens very rarely. Be that person. Safely, but try to be that person. Within reason.
Anthony also taught me, which you all may already know, but if you are standing, to never stand face to face with them, because it's kind of sizing them up and showing them that you're, taking their power, not giving them power. So always stand to the side of them if you're going to stand.
And it's weird. Cyril, could I borrow you for a minute? Stand here? Because he brings up an excellent point. Well, the first thing is I'm at completely disadvantage with Cyril here. Because the man is genetically superior than me. However, there's the other piece here in that if Cyril and I stand face to face with each other, this is what two people do in a ring before the bell rings. Right? Now, if you and I were to stand at a place where if you wanted to turn that way, we're both looking at the same thing. We're both in a space where we're actually level. I might be able to say, if you keep standing that way, we might be able to not look at our heads together. And there is a bit of a difference. Why are we talking about this? Because again, those pieces are central to what your upbringing, your culture, your safety goes. My friends, the people I've engaged who've spent a lifetime incarcerated, a lifetime in prison, will more often than not want to stand next to a wall because they feel safe, because no one can come up behind them, because they won't be stabbed, because they won't be hurt. And that shouldn't be unusual to us. I often think when I walk up and down the streets of Skid Row, and I want to think of you, do you ever walk right behind someone?
No.
Why not?
I don't want them to feel any type of way about me.
Yep. Now think about it. You may not notice that at a mall. You may not notice that at the beach. But I dare you, please don't do this, to walk out of here right now and just walk 3 paces behind someone right behind them.
All right, do the same for yourself. Like, how do you feel if someone's walking right behind you?
Exactly.
It's the worst.
Obviously, those are central to communication. It's not just the eye contact and the words that come out of our mouth. It's our ability to make eye contact. In general, 60 to 70% of the time is actually really generous. You may be having a bad day. You may have some level of anxiety. It might be hard for you to actually lock eyes with people, but there is something incredibly warm and comforting when that person looks at you, rather than say, hey Jake, hey, you good? You need coffee? It's good to see you, man. You're doing well? What's wrong with me? Right? We need to be at that place with folks. Again, avoid folding your arms. It signals that you're not listening. It signals fear. It signals safety. I don't feel safe next to you. I want to hold it close to me because I'm a little bit fearful. Find what's comfortable. Is it hands in your pockets? Is it having your hands on your side? Is it basically just holding your hands down in front of you? Think about those signals that we give off when we talk to folks. Cell phones. Folks, put them on silent. Vibrate them when you're out there. Just do something. Because again, if you are going to grab your cell phone while you're talking to someone, because let's say that someone said, hey, I am interested in finding out where the bus is, or could you tell me what bus I need to take to get to DPSS? Before I pull the thing out of my pocket to look at it, I'm going to say, Cyril, would you mind if I look on my phone to see if I can give you directions to that? I'm deliberately saying what I'm doing in order to help, right? If I'm in the middle of a conversation with you and you suddenly see me pulling the phone out, what are you doing? Who are you communicating with? I thought we were talking. Are you telling the cops I'm here? Again, your head will go in many different directions. Again, paraphrasing what is said, repeat it. Know the beauty of the echo. In other words, what you're telling me, so let me get this straight. Those are the things that you want to use and rely on because they definitely demonstrate that level. Not interrupting. Do not prepare yourself to reply while the other person speaks. Let the thing sit for a little bit before you say it. The last thing that he or she says may change the meaning of what is already being said. The key here has to do with the idea that when I decide to interrupt because I feel compelled to say something important, I may have cut off a very, very essential part of the story. But that happened to me 10 years ago. But I'm better now. But I'm taking the medicine now. And again, those are the pieces where you might skip it because you felt like you needed to interject or interrupt with thought. Nonverbal behavior, obviously, facial expressions, tone of voice, other behaviors. Again, the one I have always appreciated is that when you walk up and say, hi, my name is, I can even say my name, Rudy, and the person will say no. That's it. That is it. I am not going to convince you. I am not here to debate you and say, no, give me a shot, man. Don't say no. No. No is no. Keep going. Shut down your internal dialogue while listening. Avoid daydreaming. It is impossible to attentively listen to someone else when your internal voice is on at the same time. My God, this person looks like my cousin. My God, this person reminds me. No. Let's do the best we can within reason to try to stay focused on what is being said. You definitely show interest by asking questions. You clarify what is said. Open-ended questions. I would rather you tell me, if you're willing to, why and how long and what happened, than just tell me yes or no. And again, the nature of open-ended questions is one that requires practice and exercise, and we will be doing one later on this subject. Yes and no questions shut down the conversation. When you find yourself asking the person 3 things and they were yes and no, I guarantee you that conversation will not go on more than 90 seconds. Because basically you've reduced the conversation with someone to just filling out a questionnaire, to just basically a form. Obviously not changing the subject, I've said that before. Open and neutral without holding judgment. Patience. We can listen much faster than others can speak is very true. Especially when you think about what trauma does to an individual's ability to communicate. Learn to recognize active listening. Watch television interviews and observe whether the interviewer is practicing active listening. Our friend Anderson Cooper was not. Our friend Anderson Cooper did not want to hear Jeff. Instead, criticized Jeff. You got bottles. You're sleeping on rocks. Are you an alcoholic? Like, that's not. Do you know what? I should put this Canadian nurse, and Anderson Cooper as the 2 ends of the spectrum. Right? For Anderson Cooper. I wish I could invite them to this class. It would be fun. Again, these things aren't new to you. You guys are familiar with it, but I'm going to show you all a really quick clip before we take a break. And I want you to pay special attention to the difference between the 2 people interviewing on this one, okay?
Why did you do this, Allie? This is terrible.
Oh, great!
This is Michael's giraffe, and he's crying now. Why did you do this?
Cause.
Cause is not an answer.
Active listening.
Ray, that doesn't work.
It works. I just use it on the worst kids in the neighborhood.
Would you? Look at this. Look what she did.
Try it.
No, Ray.
I'll do it. You want me to do it?
No. Okay. Allie, let's talk about what you did.
I don't want to talk.
Are you feeling angry?
Reflect back.
You're angry.
Yes.
Okay. that it's not okay to rip up toys when we're angry.
Judgmental.
You are angry because,
Because it used to be your toy.
oh,
Yes.
I see. You think that Mommy and Daddy pay too much attention to Michael and Jeffrey.
Ray, okay, I was handling this.
They get everything.
Right, and you're upset because we gave them your old giraffe.
I still liked it.
But you weren't playing with it.
But that doesn't matter, though, because it was still yours. And you're mad because we gave it to Michael without asking you, right?
Right.
Well, Mommy and Daddy made a mistake. And everybody makes mistakes, right, Mommy?
Yes.
Do you feel better now, Allie?
Yes, can I have the giraffe?
Well, it's broken, honey.
I know, I want to try to fix it for Michael.
Uh-huh. You're sweet.
Thank you, Daddy.
See what I did there?
Yeah. Can't believe it. It's pretty amazing. You did it.
Anything else need taken care of while I'm around?
No.
What? What's the matter?
Nothing with you, obviously.
Again, it's a really silly example from a sitcom, but it's a beautiful example where in situations we may find ourselves wanting to parent or guide an individual, especially when we see them in harm's way, or we see that there's an active part of where they live that may cause them a severe amount of pain or discomfort. And that is fine. We are servants, we are advocates, but there's also the need for us to recognize that there's that isolation you often hear me talk about that really truly is fed and nurtured by just you listening and bouncing the thing back to the person. Because again, if you've never been in a cave somewhere on a hike and you hear your echo, think about how awesome it is to yell and to hear that voice come back. Or, I know that baseball isn't popular in Switzerland, but I love throwing the ball, I love playing catch. I love just knowing that that thing that I throw will come back to me. And that's a human thing. Any questions, folks? You guys have been exceptional with your examples. I am learning more and more about you, and I'm grateful. Let's take a break in about 10 minutes. We're going to reconvene. Thank you.